Disclaimer: this content is only for mature audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. I told him I just needed to lay down for a while. My body felt heavy, my thoughts scattered. The day had been long, filled with the little storms that quietly drain you. I thought he'd let me rest. I thought he'd just sit beside me, maybe run his fingers through my hair until sleep took over. But when the mattress shifted and his warmth pressed close, my breath caught. It wasn't sudden or rough, it was slow. Intentional. The kind of closeness that makes the air feel heavy with something unspoken. His hand brushed against my arm, not hurried, just a feather-like graze, but enough to make my heart pound a little harder. I could feel him looking at me, not in the casual way husbands sometimes glance at their wives, but as if every detail, the curve of my shoulder, the way my lips parted slightly, was something he wanted to memorize. "Just stay still," he whispered, his voice low, almost tender, but threaded with a weight I couldn't name. My pulse betrayed me. I stayed still, but inside, I was anything but calm. This wasn't about tiredness anymore. It was about the slow unraveling of distance, the kind that creeps in when life gets busy and routine swallows up passion. We'd been here before, in this exact room, on this exact bed, but tonight, something felt different. There was patience in his touch, but also a quiet hunger. I could sense the way his breath deepened, the way his hand lingered at my waist just a moment too long before sliding upward in a warm, steady path. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't desperate. It was a slow burn, the kind that starts in your chest and spreads outward, until even the smallest movement feels electric. And yet, I said nothing. I only breathed in the moment, letting it fill me. I wasn't just laying down anymore. I was waiting, for him, for us, for whatever would happen next. Because sometimes, love doesn't knock. Sometimes, it climbs on top of you, and makes you remember exactly who you belong to. His eyes stayed on mine, searching, as if he was reading something I hadn't said aloud. The weight of that gaze made my chest tighten. It wasn't just attraction, it was familiarity, history, and a quiet question he was too proud to voice. I shifted slightly beneath him, the sheets whispering against my skin. His palm, warm and steady, remained at my waist, grounding me in the moment. For a second, neither of us spoke. The air felt thick with things we'd been avoiding, little cracks in conversations, missed moments where we should have held on longer, laughed louder, stayed closer. Finally, he broke the silence. "You've been distant," he murmured, his tone soft but edged with something vulnerable. I swallowed. "Life's been a lot lately." He nodded slowly, his thumb brushing small circles against my side, as if trying to soothe away the weight of my words. "I miss you," he said simply, his voice almost breaking on the last word. The honesty in it pulled at me, harder than I expected. My heart thudded, and for a moment, I couldn't look away. This wasn't about seduction, not yet. It was about finding each other again in the spaces where we drifted apart. A faint smile tugged at his lips, though his eyes stayed serious. He leaned closer, close enough that I could feel his breath against my cheek. My fingers curled around the sheet, resisting the urge to close the space between us. "Remember that night we stayed up talking until the sun came up?" he asked quietly. I did. Every detail. The way his laugh had felt like a promise. The way I'd fallen asleep with my head on his chest, feeling like I'd found the safest place in the world. "I remember," I whispered, my voice catching. His hand slid slowly upward, not urgent, but deliberate, his fingertips brushing along my arm until they reached my shoulder. He lingered there, tracing the curve of it with quiet reverence. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the soft rustle of leaves against the window. Inside, the world had narrowed down to the space between us, and the unspoken truth that neither of us wanted to step away from it. I didn't know what he would do next, but I knew I wasn't going to stop him. He didn't move away. If anything, his presence felt heavier now, not in weight, but in intent. I could hear his breathing, slow and measured, as if he was trying to control something simmering beneath the surface. "I've been here," I murmured, breaking the quiet. Even if it didn't feel like it. His brow furrowed slightly, the shadows catching the edges of his face. "Being here and being with me aren't the same thing." The words stung, not because they were harsh, but because they were true. I'd let the noise of life dull the edges of us, work deadlines, late dinners, the endless cycle of things that felt urgent but weren't. Before I could respond, his hand slipped from my waist to rest against the mattress beside me, caging me in without actually holding me down. The closeness was deliberate. It wasn't about dominance, it was about not letting me drift away again. "I see you laughing with everyone else," he said quietly. "But with me, it's like you've been holding something back." I inhaled slowly, my chest tightening. Maybe I was afraid, I admitted. Of what? His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed him. There was a flicker of worry, almost desperation. That we'd forget how to find our way back. He didn't answer right away. Instead, his gaze dropped to my lips, lingering there for a moment before returning to my eyes. The silence between us stretched, heavy and unbroken, until a knock echoed faintly from somewhere downstairs. We froze. "That'll be the delivery," I said softly, though neither of us moved. The subplot tugged at reality. We had friends coming later, a casual dinner planned. It should have been an ordinary evening. But now, with him above me, his breath warm against my skin, ordinary felt miles away. "I don't care about that right now," he murmured, ignoring the second knock. And I believed him. His hand shifted, fingertips brushing along my collarbone, following the slope of it with an almost reverent patience. The touch wasn't rushed, it was measured, as if each inch he traced was reclaiming something we'd lost. I felt the words before I spoke them. "You're still the only one who can do that." "Do what?" he asked, his tone quieter now. "Make me forget everything else." His expression changed, softer, yet more intent. He leaned just a fraction closer, his forehead nearly touching mine, the space between our lips reduced to a breath. But he didn't close the gap. Instead, he let the tension coil tighter, like a string pulled to its limit. The knock downstairs came again, louder this time, a reminder that the outside world still existed. We didn't move. Because in that suspended moment, neither of us was ready to let it go. The knocking downstairs finally stopped, but the silence it left behind was almost louder. We were still frozen in that half-breath between what was and what could be, his forehead brushing mine, his hand resting just above my heart. I knew he could feel how fast it was beating, there was no way to hide it. His voice was low when he spoke. "I don't want to lose this." The words hit me harder than I expected. Not just because of what they meant, but because of the way he said them, not like a demand, but like a plea. "You won't," I whispered, though my throat felt tight. He searched my eyes, his own narrowing slightly, as if trying to decide whether to believe me. His other hand came up, fingers lightly cupping my jaw. The warmth of his touch was grounding, yet the gentleness of it made my chest ache. I lifted my hand to his wrist, holding him there. "I'm still here," I murmured. His lips curved, but only slightly. "Prove it." The challenge was quiet, but it made my pulse stutter. I could feel the tension shift, not toward anger, but towards something deeper, more urgent. I didn't answer with words. I let my hand slide slowly down his forearm, tracing the subtle strength there. His breath caught, just faintly, and I knew he felt it, the shift, the opening. Outside, a faint rumble of thunder rolled in the distance, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. He leaned closer, close enough that my lashes brushed his cheek when I blinked. My own breath came shallower, and the air between us felt like it might ignite. "I want the US from before," he said softly. I swallowed hard. Then don't stop looking for her. The vulnerability in his eyes was almost unbearable. His thumb brushed against my lower lip, slow, deliberate, as if memorizing the shape of it. My whole body felt suspended, balanced on the edge of a choice neither of us had quite made yet. Then, without warning, the doorbell rang downstairs. We both froze again, the interruption slicing through the moment like a thin blade. He closed his eyes briefly, a quiet, frustrated breath escaping him. "They'll wait," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. When he looked at me again, the storm was still there in his gaze, but so was something else, a quiet, unshakable certainty. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Because everything in his expression told me the same thing: we weren't done. Not tonight. The sound of the doorbell faded, but the tension it left behind clung to the air like humidity before a storm. His hand was still at my jaw, his thumb brushing lightly, almost absently, over my skin. He didn't look toward the door. His eyes stayed on mine, steady, unyielding, as if daring the world outside to matter more than this moment. Then, a phone rang. Not mine. His. He closed his eyes for half a second, his jaw tightening before he reached for it, the screen's glow catching the edge of his face. His brows drew together, and in that flicker of change, I knew, whatever name he saw had weight. "It's Mark," he said finally, his voice unreadable. Mark. His oldest friend. The one he hadn't spoken to in months. The one tied to the argument we'd both been too stubborn to revisit. "You should answer," I said softly. His gaze stayed locked on mine, almost defiant. "Not right now." But I could see the conflict in his eyes, the pull between the world pressing in and the world we'd built here in the quiet. The phone rang again. "You're not avoiding him because of me, are you?" I asked, my tone careful, but my heart pounding. His silence was an answer in itself. And in that stillness, another layer of the truth settled in. This wasn't just about us drifting apart. This was about the things he'd kept from me, the parts of himself he'd chosen not to bring to my side of the bed. He placed the phone face down on the nightstand, then leaned in so close I could feel the whisper of his breath against my temple. "I'm not ready to talk to him. I'm barely holding on here with you." The words lodged somewhere deep in my chest. My hand found its way to his shirt, fingers curling into the fabric, not to pull him closer, but to keep him from pulling away. "You're holding on," I said, "but you're not letting me hold on with you." His breath hitched, just slightly, and for a long moment, neither of us moved. Then, almost unconsciously, his forehead rested against mine, his weight shifting just enough for his other hand to slide along my arm, his thumb tracing the delicate path of my pulse. We stayed there, suspended in the fragile space between closeness and confession. The phone vibrated again on the nightstand. This time, neither of us looked at it. Because whatever waited outside that room could wait a little longer. The phone stopped vibrating. The room settled into a stillness so deep I could hear my own heartbeat echo in my ears. He stayed close, his forehead resting on mine, his hand still at my jaw like he was afraid I might disappear if he let go. "I don't want to keep losing pieces of us," he said, the words raw, stripped of pride. "You won't," I promised. "Not if we start letting each other all the way in again." His eyes searched mine, and for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I saw the flicker of something unguarded. Hope. He let out a slow breath, his thumb brushing along my cheek, and in that quiet, I leaned up, letting my lips meet his in the softest of touches. Not hurried, not desperate, just the kind of kiss that speaks in years rather than minutes. It deepened only slightly, the warmth between us growing, his hand moving to cradle the back of my head. I could feel him melt into it, as though he'd been holding himself back for too long. The distance between us, the one we'd both felt but never named, seemed to dissolve into the air. When we finally pulled back, our foreheads stayed pressed together. Neither of us spoke right away. The moment didn't need words. Then, just as the quiet began to feel safe, his phone buzzed one last time. He hesitated before picking it up, the screen lighting his face. His eyes narrowed slightly. "It's not Mark," he said. "Who is it?" I asked. He looked at me, the faintest shadow crossing his expression. "It's my sister." I frowned. "I thought she was overseas." "She was," he said slowly, glancing at the phone again. "But if she's calling now," his voice trailed off. The unspoken weight of it hung between us. The night had shifted again, from closeness to uncertainty in a single beat. He set the phone down and took my hand. "Whatever this is," he said, "we'll face it together." And for the first time, I believed him. The call from his sister changed the air in the room, but not in the way I feared. She was back in town, unexpectedly, after months away. There was urgency in her voice, but it wasn't about tragedy, it was about family. She needed him, and she needed both of us. After we hung up, he sat on the edge of the bed, head bowed, rubbing the back of his neck. I moved beside him, resting my hand lightly over his. "We can't put life on pause," I said softly. "But we can decide how we face it." He looked at me then, really looked, with the kind of gaze that feels like a quiet vow. "Then let's face it together. No more hiding pieces of ourselves." In that moment, the months of silence, distance, and quiet ache between us felt like they'd been preparing us for this, not to break, but to choose each other again. Not as the people we used to be, but as the people we'd become. Later, we went downstairs. The untouched dinner delivery still sat on the counter, the rain from earlier leaving the window streaked and soft with reflections. We ate in the kitchen, talking about his sister, about the calls we hadn't made, and the ones we still needed to. It wasn't a grand, sweeping gesture that mended us. It was the simple, unhurried act of showing up in the same moment and staying there. When he reached across the table and laced his fingers through mine, there was no rush, no urgency, just a quiet, steady warmth that said more than anything else could. I realized then that love isn't only found in the moments where your heart races. Sometimes, it's in the ones where your heart simply rests, knowing it's safe. And as I held his gaze, I knew we were no longer on the edge of losing each other. We were already walking back, side by side. Sometimes, love doesn't arrive with fire, it stays with light.